Welcome back. 40 years in the big house. Michigan Tales from my 4 decades as a Wolverine. Jon Falk, the former Michigan equipment manager, joins us today. Hey,
Glad to be here.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
How you doing, Jon?
And for anybody who doesn't know Jon, he is a wealth of Michigan information. The stories that you have, probably, I wanted to ask you, how difficult was it with 40 years of stories, of daily stories, to condense that all into
Well,
to a book?
I
Well,
wrote
they
a
have
book.
editors, right?
Right, yeah, that's what my people are for, But to be honest with you, I wrote a first book, If These Walls Could Talk. Dan Ewald and I wrote it again. Of course, you all know Dan. He worked for the Tigers,
Yes.
Detroit Free Press. And when I retired, I said, Dan, I'd sure like to write a book again, and just bring it all 40 years and just encompass, because I want people to know how great Michigan football is. We've struggled the last few years. We can't deny that. But this book talks about how great Michigan football was and how great football Michigan's going to be. So Dan said, Jon, I can't do it. I don't think there's enough stories. I said, let me go home. I got notes from all my years back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s. Let me review. I got with him, and Dan said, you know what? We're going to make this a book about how great it was to be able to be at Michigan for 40 years. Because he said, hardly anybody lasted in college athletics today for 40 years. And he said, you were able to go through 5 football coaches and 7 athletic directors. Let's make that the way the story goes. And that's what we did. And then I put some stories in there about Jimmy Harbaugh that I didn't use in the first book. Well, lo and behold,
Right.
Jimmy becomes the football coach. So on his day that he was announced, Sherry, my wife, and I were there with him at his breakfast, and I said, Jimmy, would you do the foreword for my book, my new one coming out? She said, Jon, I would love to. So he wrote the foreword of the book that's just out there.
It has to be very interesting that you have stories of, as you call him, Jimmy, when he was 10 or 11 years old. I mean, it's how interesting and neat is it for you to see his whole transformation and now him being back as the head coach?
I went in to see him like his first week or so on the job. He's sitting at his desk, and I said, you know what, Jim, this is unbelievable. I sat across Bo Schembechler, Gary Moeller, Lloyd Carr, Rich Rodriguez, and Brady Hoke. And here I am today, sitting across the desk from Jim Harbaugh. I said, this is like a dream. This is a phenomenal dream for Michigan. Because what Jimmy's done at Michigan is he's brought in a belief. And a belief starts enthusiasm. Enthusiasm will explode into passion. And passion, it warms your soul and lifts your spirits. And that's what Michigan's done right now. That we have lifted our spirits. Look at how we play. Look at the record today. Look how we play. Listen, look, you take Michigan State and Michigan. Both those teams have gone down to the last out for 3 games. Mm-hmm. 3 games in one season, in 1 year. And it just goes to show you how great both of these teams are and how much fun it is. Next week, it's Ohio State.
I wanted to ask you about that briefly. The game is coming up. This year's version, obviously, maybe lost a little bit of luster with Ohio State losing, and that game not meaning maybe a chance to the trip to the Big Ten title game for sure. But what's your favorite memory from maybe from the game, if you have one?
You talk about lackluster. Okay. In 1996, we weren't the best football team in the country. We lost a couple tough games. But we had to go down to play Ohio State in Columbus when they were undefeated and number 1 in the country. When we got there, I mean, everybody who had an O was there. I don't know where they all came from. But the screaming, and we were down 9-0 at the half. And we brought Brian Greasy back in. And Greasy came back, we hit that pass, we're down 9-7. Remy Hamilton kicks the field goal, it's 10-9. He kicks another one, it's 13-9, and we get out of there 13-9. There was no lackluster because Michigan wasn't as good as Ohio State. The other great story, 1976, Bo was coaching, and we had never beaten Ohio State down in Columbus with Bo as coach. So the week, but in August, he comes in to me and says, hey, Falk, they got this kicker by the name of Thomas Gladany. Now, he kicked the ball to the moon. Now, how are we going to plan on returning this football that he kicks out of sight? And I said, well, sir, I can get a jug machine and we can practice. So we got a jug machine, and every night, 5 minutes before practice, I'd push those balls through. Those balls would arch up, they'd touch the moon, they'd come down, and there was Jim Smith back there. We practiced every day in August, September, October, November. We get down there to Columbus, and right before the half, they throw a ball into the end zone, and we intercept it. Nothing at the half. We ran into the locker room, and I'm starting to say, wow, we got a chance to go to the Rose Bowl here. And I went around the locker room, and Bo always told me, he said, Jon, take compassion in the locker room. You take it in there, teach these players what it's like to win. And I'm in there, men, we got a chance. Well, Bo walks out. Bo goes, men, gather round. You gather round, men. Today, that football game, it's over. It's going to be Michigan today, men. It's going to be Michigan. We just made Woody Hayes pass the football. But those are just some of the great games and some of the great excitement when you play Ohio State. And no kidding, there'll be more excitement this week.
Absolutely. We're looking forward to it. And for more stories like this one, 40 years in the big house. There it is. There's the book. Jon, thank you so much for joining us
for
today.
having me on.
Hey,
Hi,
get your
Jon,
tweets
great
in
to
right
see you.
now. We're going to do a little bit of that Twitter reaction from everything that's going on. Hashtag 7SportsCave. Get that right now. That's coming up next on the Suburban 47 Sports Cave.